Welcome to Contact Point, the podcast that brings together specialists from TTI and our supplier colleagues from Phoenix Contact with discussion, information, and insights on the newest technologies helping the world move to an all-electric society. And now, Contact Point.
I am your host, John Sandy, and joining me today is Corey Meyer from Phoenix Contact. Why don't we start by telling the listeners a little bit about yourself, your history at Phoenix, and what you're doing today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have actually been at Phoenix Contact my entire career. I started here at the company, over 7 years ago now, as an intern in our industrial computer or industrial PC department. I spent a summer interning here, and I was pretty dead set on starting my career here. And thankfully, right out of college, I was able to start here as a product specialist in our industrial cabinet connectivity group. And I spent a number of years as a specialist and then was a lead specialist for a year. And then last year, it's been 2.5 years now. I had the opportunity to take over the business unit and I'm now the product manager for industrial cabinet connectivity.
I know we're going to be talking mainly about terminal blocks today. Why don't you define for our listeners what is a terminal block and what we'll be talking about?
Yes, so when we're talking about a terminal block, and put it in the simplest way, if you can think of a wire nut, something that you use in your household if you're wiring up a light or something like that, that is essentially what a terminal block does. Really, its job is to connect wires. Of course, terminal blocks in the industrial world have a number of different applications and can be used in many, many different areas. But at the end of the day, their function is to connect wires. And then when we're talking about different types of terminal blocks in the industrial world, you have, I guess, what you would kind of consider more of our electronic terminal block that you would see more on a device connector, something like that that connects to a printed circuit board. That's one type of terminal block. But then the type of terminal block that we're talking about today, again, is what we consider more of the industrial terminal block, and that's going to live on a DIN rail. So a DIN rail is essentially a piece of metal that I'd say 95% of products are mounted on within a control cabinet. And then those are the terminal blocks that we're talking about today, are again your DIN rail mount terminal blocks in an industrial environment.
Corey, thanks for that overview. So if we look at the terminal blocks we're talking about today, what specific applications or what type of applications are they used for?
So like I said, when they're mounted on the DIN rail, that DIN rail is going to be within a control cabinet. And that control cabinet can have many, many different functions, controlling some part of an automation system or an industrial system. So within that control cabinet, terminal blocks have a number of different applications they can be used for. You can see them being used for power distribution. So that's exactly what it sounds like. You have your power coming into that control cabinet, likely going through a power supply, and then it, of course, has to be distributed throughout that control cabinet and throughout that system. Terminal blocks can be used for that. Terminal blocks can be used for signal management. So within a control system, you're going to have many different signals and sensors and things like that need to be managed and routed and sent to the proper areas, whether it be a controller, a relay, so on and so forth. And terminal blocks are very common for that. They can be used for protection. So we have a lot of different terminal blocks that can take a fuse or a circuit breaker that can be put at a point in the control cabinet where it's protecting different various devices and things like that. And then another example could be what we call a ground terminal block. And a ground terminal block is, once again, exactly what it says, or it sounds like. It actually has a metal foot that makes a connection to the DIN rail that allows that to have a grounded connection, which is, of course, a pretty crucial safety aspect of a control cabinet. So I could go on and on, but if you really think about within a control cabinet, that environment, anywhere that wires need to be connected in different ways, again, power, signal, ground, that's where terminal blocks play in this world.
Thanks for that, Corey. And just a thought that came into my head as you were going through all of that. Obviously, there's a whole range of different terminal blocks and a whole range of terminal blocks that Phoenix Contact offers. Do you guys also offer any kind of value add for the customers if they're looking for something in addition to just buying the terminal block?
Absolutely. So we actually, at our U.S. headquarters right here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, we have a full value add center that can do exactly that. So we have the capability to put a couple different terminal blocks in a bag and zip it up for you and send it off to the point as far as building an entire DIN rail, all assembled, marked, and put together and be able to sold as one part number. And it's pretty much everything in between. So we do a full value add center, our solution center as we call it, that is absolutely capable of kitting or doing DIN rail assemblies to really kind of put all those terminal blocks and of course more products. Obviously, Phoenix Contact, our bread and butter is terminal blocks, but we have a number of different products, and we can also kit and put our other products on those assemblies as well.
That's great. Appreciate that overview. And obviously, any of our listeners looking for anything solution wise or value add wise from Phoenix Contact, talk to us here at TTI as well. We can all get together and offer you whatever you're looking for. Okay, getting back to the product for today. I know we're focusing specifically on a new type of connection technology. Maybe you could give us a quick overview of exactly what we're going to be referring to today and what type of technology it is.
Yeah, so to kind of start, I'll just explain what exactly I mean when I say connection technology. When I'm talking about these terminal blocks and connecting wires, there's different ways that you can actually make that physical connection. So the wire comes into the terminal block, and there has to be some way for the wire to be secured to what we call the current bar that then allows the electricity to pass through that terminal block. Many different ways to do that. One of the first ways and the most common ways is a screw connection. And again, as it sounds, that uses a screw. And basically you insert the wire and then you tighten down that screw and it makes the connection. That's a very common one of our most popular ones. But in the recent years, probably I shouldn't say just years, over the last couple decades probably, we've seen more and more developments in connection technology to where now we use a lot of spring connections. And again, it's exactly like it sounds like I'm saying that a lot, but it's, things are named pretty easily. The spring connection uses a spring that you can actuate with a screwdriver, and then we have some other ways to actuate it that then has spring tension used to hold that wire in there. And then most of the time, that's better for vibration and for speed. So lots of different options with how you connect the wire. Insulation displacement, which actually you don't have to strip that insulation back from the wire. The current bar actually cuts right into the wire and makes that electrical connection. So lots of different options that we have there, and basically the connection technology is exactly what it sounds like. It is the way that connection is made to secure the wire to allow the electricity to pass through.
Corey, that's a great overview. And the thing that strikes me there as I'm listening to you is there's an awful lot of different ways of effectively achieving a connection. If any of our listeners are sort of thinking about what the best way for them would be, could you run through the kind of maybe thought process and deciding factors that would influence me and picking the way I go forward with a specific type of connection technology?
Absolutely. And there's a lot of different factors. You're absolutely right that play into selecting a connection technology, and it really depends on the application, the industry, and even the individual. Depending on, if we talk about application, you might be looking at something that has high vibration. We think of like an entertainment ride or a conveyor machine, something that you see consistent high vibration. Historically, screws, they can loosen up. And particularly Phoenix Contact, we have things within our screw connection that does everything it can for it not to loosen up. But again, a screw does always have the ability to loosen up. And that's where the spring connections became very popular. So if you think of a spring, it's pretty much constantly self-adjusting. So under that higher vibration, that spring can keep that tight connection no matter what. So that's one example, is kind of like I said, the application and the environment. Where you're using something that fits that. And then you can look at the industry. Obviously, the industrial world has been around for well over 100 years, and some industries just kind of started to move towards certain standards. And again, they are exactly that, they're standards. So if you think of the electric power industry, it's very common to see a volt connection be the requirement in that industry. If you look at telecommunications, insulation displacement has been a very common industry standard in that industry. So there's a lot of that stuff at play, again, with specifications and industries. And then it can come down to something as simple as personal preference. There's a lot of human interaction with these terminal blocks. Every single wire needs to be wired up. We're working on it, but unfortunately we're not there on something that can wire itself up all on its own just yet. So as of now, obviously there's human interaction involved in that. And that again can come with personal preference. Some some guys and gals out there can be spending hours upon hours upon hours every day wiring these up. And some people might prefer spring connections, some may prefer a screw connection. And it can also be what really is the goal of the selection. If someone's specifically looking to really save time, they might go for our push-in connection that has the ability to directly insert a wire. If someone's looking for, again, something that's as high performing it can be in a high vibration environment, they might go for a bolt connection or something like that. So there's a lot of different factors at play, but it all comes down at the end of what's going to work best for the specific application.
That's great, Corey. Thank you. That's a good overview there. So is it fair to say that in a lot of industries, there's a standard way that they've done it for years and years and years, and that barring them having potentially any challenges or any obstacles moving forward, they tend to stick with what they know?
I do think that has historically been true, but I can say, and even the past 5-7 years being in the industry, I do think there is some change in that now, where a lot of those older specifications are starting to open up and experiencing some change. A great example is vibration. There was kind of I don't want to use the word stigma, but thought process, a way of thought that for years that a bolt connection or a screw connection was the best way to handle vibration, because you could really torque it down and make sure it was as tight as possible. And that's absolutely true, but we've had a lot of development in the world of spring connection over the past number of years, and now it's really starting to switch that high vibration environments are spring connections are looked to be the best option in that environment. So it absolutely, there's trends, there's standards, there's specifications, but I do think with a lot of quick development in the past number of years and rapid development and the capabilities of new products, I do think we're starting to see a shift in a lot of those industries.
And Corey, that's a great lead in now to talk about the latest and newest type of connection technology that Phoenix Contact are offering. Why don't you tell us about that?
So our latest connection technology is what we call PushX, and PushX is an iteration of our second newest connection technology, which is what we call Push-In. And Push-In connection technology is a version of a spring connection, but the beauty of it is if you're using a solid or a ferrite wire, you can directly insert it without the need for tools. So if you compare that to a screw connection where you need to torque it down and make sure that it's tight, a standard spring cage connection, you need to insert a screwdriver to open up that spring, insert the wire, then release it. With push-in technology, again, if you're using a ferrite or a solid wire, you can directly insert it without the need for tools. So the ease of installation, and then most importantly, the time, the speed, the labor savings was a huge benefit. Push-in connection technology was released in 2009 and has quickly grown to our largest connection technology globally, and is not slowing down. And PushX connection technology is the newest iteration, the newest connection technology that is similar to the push-in technology, but it actually is, the best way to put it is it's a pre-tensioned version. So with push-in connection technology, when you're inserting that wire, you have to defeat the force of the spring, where with push-X connection, it's what you would think of a mousetrap. That spring is pre-tensioned, so the force required is far less than what's required with the push-in connection.
So looking at PushX, what are the benefits of this connection technology specifically, and why would any of our listeners choose that over some of the many others that are out there?
With push-in, you need a ferrite or a solid wire to directly insert it. If you're using a stranded wire, you do have to push down on what we call our pusher. It's essentially a little button on the terminal block to open up that spring. With PushX, you don't have to use a tool no matter what. So if you have a solid, a ferrite, or a stranded wire, you can still directly insert it without the need for a tool. So with PushX, it's our first connection technology ever that you can take a stranded wire, no ferrite required, and directly insert it into a terminal block. And that mousetrap design has a trigger that then allows that spring to snap shut with the stranded wire. So that's really the big kicker with PushX, is that ability with the stranded wire. And just in general, no matter the type of wire being used, it is by far and large definitely our fastest and easiest connection technology to use now. So anyone on the cutting edge, I'm always looking for that latest and greatest shiny new product. PushX is definitely it.
Thanks, Corey. That's a great overview of the PushX technology. Why don't you give us an insight today as to what particular types of products Phoenix Contact offer with PushX technology?
PushX technology is a fairly young product for us. The first place we saw it released, or the first time I should say, was in 2022. So 2 years, is fairly young when it comes to connection technology. But it has been growing quickly. So we originally released it in what we call our XTV terminal blocks, which are a side entry connection. And we released them in some of our larger sizes in our terminal blocks. And then as time went on, we released some in our outside of the DIN rail terminal block world. On the electronic side, we released some of our printed circuit board terminal blocks with the PushX technology. And then just recently, my group expanded the family pretty heavily into a smaller 2.5 millimeter family. And we now have a few different feed-through versions, double level, different colors, grounds. So as of right now, it's pretty much just in the terminal block family. Again, mostly in the industrial world, but then we do have a couple products in the electronic world. But for now, it is pretty much in the terminal block family.
And thinking about the other ranges of Phoenix Contact products and thinking about PushX as its technology, where do you expect to see this technology popping up as we move into the future, into the rest of this year and into next year and beyond?
I think the possibilities are endless with PushX. We saw it with push-in connection technology. Like I said, back in 2009 when that was released, originally, same thing. We saw it on the terminal blocks, and now if you look at a Phoenix Contact demo board or one of our control cabinets at a trade show, you see that little orange pusher for push-in technology everywhere. And I see the same thing happening with PushX. I think, we can absolutely see it on our relays, on our controllers, on our field wireables, or HeavyCon, so on and so forth. There's really no product that I don't see PushX having an opportunity on. As we perfected it and we learn about it in our terminal blocks, and then we have the ability to really use it in any of our products that have a connection. And again, we've seen that over the past 10, 12, 13 years with push-in connection technology, and I think we'll see the same thing with PushX.
Appreciate that, Corey. And to all of our listeners, look out for PushX coming soon to more Phoenix Contact products as we move into the future. As we're wrapping up the podcast, Corey, and I really do appreciate you spending time with us today, any last thoughts or final things you'd like to say to any of the listeners?
I think just if anything I said today sounded interesting, definitely reach out to your TTI representative, Phoenix Contact representative, and get some of these things in your hands. I'm a big believer that with any industrial product, especially terminal blocks and connection technology, the best way to be familiar with it and really see the benefits is actually holding it, interacting with it, wiring it up. So I would kind of leave everyone with that if there's any interest today, definitely grab some, get them in your hands, because in my opinion, that's the best way to really see how awesome these are.
That's a perfect summary, and thanks very much, Corey. Thank you to all of our listeners. Thanks for joining us today on our Contact Point podcast. Join us again for our next Phoenix Contact podcast coming soon.
Thank you for joining us today on Contact Point. Keep up with the latest episodes on tti.com/podcasts.